Okay, so I'm here this afternoon with Denise Mullen. Denise, do you want to share with us something of who you are and your family, and obviously those early years growing up?
Well, as you said, Kenny, I'm Denise Mullen. I'm now 54, and my father was murdered when I was almost 4, so 50 years. Um, we had just returned. My parents were quite fearful that something was going to happen, and we had just returned the day before from for a few days away down in Wicklow, and it was a very happy time. We stayed in a lovely hotel. I can even remember that what I had to eat. I can visualise my brother sitting in the high chair. But then, unfortunately, the next day, on Monday, the 1st of September, after 10 o'clock at night, my father was murdered, and attempted murder of my mother. 13 bullets were fired at her. And unfortunately, I heard it, and I got up out of bed, and saw a scene that'll never leave me. After that, I must say, our lives changed completely. We were only out of that house about 2 months. We lived in the Moy up until the June, and my maternal grandmother lived with us, and then she got a smaller house, and we moved out to College Land. And my mother was never happy about moving out to College Land, but it's where my father had lived when he was about 9, because prior to that my father was actually from Dunleary. And then he moved to live with his mother's parents, and his brother and, sister. And but he was anxious to move back out there, and he bought the house from an old aunt. And there 2 months, the house was work getting done to the house. I can remember the cement lorry coming one day, and I was totally fascinated by it, because it had one of those rotating things in the back, and I'd be at the window watching this greatly. And but anyhow, 1st of September, our lives changed, and believe me, it didn't change for the best. From that, even right down to the wake was an uneasy time as well, because couldn't have anything in the house, obviously, the way the house was left. And the wake was in a cousin's of my father's, and thanks for them for doing that. I can remember his mother lived in Liverpool along with his sister, and I can remember my mother's brother Willie. He had a shop in Portadown. I remember the morning actually of the funeral, him saying, so it had to be very early in the morning, I'm going to the docks here to lift Denis ones. And I can remember that so clearly, him saying that. And normally I would have had the excitement of Granny in England coming over, but I knew that this wasn't an exciting time. To be honest with you, I couldn't tell you where my brother was the time of the week or who was looking after him, but I was there the whole time. I never really saw much of my mother. I can remember bringing around on a sandwich tray biscuits, and I remember John Hume was sitting there, and I
So
can't...
just explain, your daddy was involved with the SDLP, is that right?
Yeah, he was... both my parents were civil rights activists, but not civil rights in that they went out marching. My mother was totally opposed to that whole marching thing. She would, throughout her life, believe that created a sense of anger among many people. So she was death against this marching aspect of the civil rights. It was about, for her, it was about everyone. It didn't matter what religion you were. She was helping people get houses, get jobs. My father had been made ambulance controller in the South Tyrone Hospital, and he employed both sides of the community, and I'm glad to say that he did that, because I've spoken to many people that work with him down through the years, and ones have said to me, gosh, I couldn't get a job, and thanks to your father, he had given me a job. So my parents were really about fair play for everybody. And so anyhow, he was Austin Curry's election agent, and the local councillor Patsy Daly's election agent, and he also did a huge amount of work with Seamus Mullen on building his team in the Armagh area. And anyhow, I remember going around with the biscuits and going to John Hume, and I can see the face of the man beside him, but I don't actually know who it was. And he went to give me, like, it wouldn't have been, obviously there's no pound coins then, I don't know what kind it was, but we would never have been, like, no, don't want anything, no. But anyhow, I can clearly remember the funeral, and I can remember coming out of the chapel with Mummy, she in her arms, and I can visualise the sea of people, and it just seemed to be hundreds and hundreds of people. But anyhow, life from that was traumatic.
What age was your mummy then, Denise?
I think she was about 33.
So a very young woman.
Yeah. We never went back to that house, believe it or not. Never. We ended up, we had living with my grandmother in a 2-bedroomed house, and my mother's brother lived there as well. So, and my grandmother was blind, and my mother's brother had basically like a personality disorder, but he was back and forth to England. But those months or 2 years were basically hell for us living, not for me and my brother, but for my mother. It sounds silly, I know, like, but we're not big into eggs, and because my grandmother was blind, she was trying to do already mashed up egg in a cup, and here was me just nearly 4. You can't give it to him because I could see eggshells in it, but he hated eggs anyhow. We just can't stand eggs. So that, wee memories like that. There's full of eggshells because Granny couldn't see it. Anyhow, we got a council house then, a 2-bed, and it was a grand house. It was grand. I started school, and not so much, not in the my school because the teachers would have known me, but P1 and P2, and Mrs. McAleese, call her, I still run into her often, and it doesn't matter if I ran into her this week and I ran into her in a month's time, she'll say the same thing to me, Kenny, that bearing in mind this was back 1976, and she'll say to me, you're the only ever child that came to school, and I can remember her saying that could write their name, and she says, but you wrote your full name and you wrote your address. And she says, I've never in all my years of teaching had a child could come in and write their name and write their address. But, obviously there was, the broadsheet newspaper would have been in the house every day when my father was there. And, my mother would have had yet the pencil and, the paper or whatever. But I spent a good bit of my time drawing glasses, writing people's faces on Daddy's newspaper, and he would have come home from work and this newspaper was full of people with glasses on them. But anyhow, a girl said to me at school, this would have been P2, children can be very cruel. Na, you've got no daddy. And so I told my mother. Now, this girl actually was a first cousin of mine. But anyhow, so we were moved into Dungannon Primary in P3. And
it would have been very apparent for you at that stage, culturally, marriages weren't breaking down as much at that point as well. So you probably felt very much the exception in having one parent.
I
where
did.
everyone
Well, I
else
can
would
give
have-
you a good example of that. I was only P1 at this stage, and you know how children would have been. It wasn't like, what does your mother work at? Because a lot of mothers didn't work, even though mine did prior to daddy being killed. But it would have been like, what does your daddy work at? So I was saying, my daddy's dead. And I distinctively remember in P1, and I can remember some of the ones that were there, me telling them, my daddy's dead, and me saying to them, well, and this is at 4, me saying to them, well, do you know what the IRA is, and do you know what the UVF is? And a teacher caught me explaining, and by this stage I'd gathered a right wee crowd, telling school, other ones at primary, what they were. And so I was told, like, you don't be mentioning that again. Like, but anyhow, we went from a 2-income family. Yeah. My mother's birthday was the 6th of July, and Daddy, I can remember him giving her a jewellery box. And I might have told you this before, Kenny. He gave her a jewellery box, and my mother would be hot-headed. And he said, you're not opening that. And she said to him, and she flung it up the hall. The lid broke off it. She says, what do I want with a jewellery box? You have nothing to put in it. She was real tempered, this jewellery box. And of course I lifted the jewellery box because it was a wee ballerina doll, and played the music. But anyhow, he said, did you not even look in that jewellery box? Well, just look in it. And he had an Austin 1100 car, maroon one. An old, in fact, I can remember him having a blue one before that. He must have liked those cars. But he'd went in O'Hare's garage up at Tassa, bought my mother a brand new red Golf for her birthday. So a lot of families in 75 wouldn't have had one car, yeah. But both parents had the car. And I remember us coming home. I it was a hatchback, so I was in the back seat, or in the hatchback of this Golf. And I remember I stayed to the left-hand side of it all the time, because over on the right-hand side there was a dead bumblebee. And Daddy was driving behind, and my brother was in the car seat in the front. Wasn't very, no seat belts or anything then. But me waving continuously out the back window to him, and him waving back. Very good memory to have. But apart from at the time, I was disgusted, like, that they had left a dead bumblebee in Mummy's car. But on the night that my father was killed, not one bullet did they put on the Marine 11, Lawson 1100. Not a smidge went on it, but they totally riddled the new Golf. But anyhow, went to school anyhow. I went to Dungannon then thereafter. And I dreaded the 1st of September every year. The calendar come in at Christmas, you got a free calendar or something. I had been checking year on year. Oh gosh, it's another year. I'm going to have to endure this. And it didn't start in P3 actually, because I had Sister Marion, she was a nun. And she was the one that had enrolled me in the school. So I can remember us going to visit the convent and sitting there, and them coming out with the weakest orange juice for our Eddie and me. And we gave Mummy a cup of tea or whatever, and enlisted me in the school. And that was all right. Once it came to P4, all I can describe is, I'd have to use foul language, a BITCH. She had 2 rulers sellotaped together, so of course I was late in for class. So she wanted to make a spectacle of me, like being the one people that was late in on the 1st of September. Because obviously, being brought up a Catholic, we went to Mass for an anniversary. And right, P4, 5, 6, 7, even into every year. And I think I evaded 1 year in secondary school. First year was still slapping in them days, but thereafter it wasn't. It was just make a complete spectacle of you. Because they didn't know what had happened to me. No. And so much so, it was really only, I'd say, about 12 years ago that a girl at school sent me a message on Messenger and Facebook. We were together in primary school and secondary school, the same class, and I never knew that you'd lost your father. You just didn't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anyhow, we never had a fridge till I was 11. As I say, we never went back to that house. We lived in a house in Roxford Park, May. It was a grand house. The following year, the following August, my mother's mother took a stroke and passed away. And my father's mother in the November was out buying a birthday card for me to send over. And she took a massive heart attack. Never had any heart trouble. And so within just over a year, my mother's lifelines were gone. There was just it was all taken from her. And while it was a good 10 years after that, before my mother, got herself well again, maxed out in Valium, for people like my mother, they just prescribed all the medication they could to keep them half doped up all the time. So from 4, I basically was washing, cooking, cleaning, just doing everything. My mother had been lying in bed, and I used to bring her up with his pension book, and she would have signed it, and I went to the shop and bought whatever was needed to be bought. And for years, all I could ever do was tomato soup, toast and cheese, beans and toast. This is just what we had to live on. Come home from school. As my brother got older too, then would have had to clean out the fire, light the fire. It was just every day. It was just the same routine.
You both had to grow up very, very quickly.
Absolutely. We just had no other choice. It was in survival mode. So, I can honestly tell you here now, not once in primary school did I ever do any homework. Not once, because just didn't have any time. She'd have come home. By the time you got the fire sorted, the dinner sorted, the dishes done, sure, it was whatever. But anyhow, it came on anyhow to us, 15, 16, doing GCSEs. I did my GCSEs. My mother didn't even know I was doing them. And unlike whenever it came to my brother, just making sure he had got tuition for his maths and whatever. And she was doing all the prayers and novenas, and had her sisters doing all light a candle and do the 9-hour novena and do this, do that. Eddie's doing his GCSEs. She didn't even know when I was doing my GCSEs. I told her what I'd passed, made no walls till her. Like, it just was, water off a duck's back.
And do you think, Denise, that in part was that without your daddy there, your mummy depended on you to keep the home operating and going?
Oh, totally.
In the void of her being able to do so?
Absolutely, totally. Because I had said to her I would like to go and do A-levels, whatever. Oh, no. I need you at home. I need you at home. And like, she was back at nursing then. No, I need you at home. Sure, I can't manage. So, yeah, I've been through the counselling process for that. And yeah, I did go through a phase of being resentful of that. When my first son was born, he's 25 now, so whatever, I said 26 odd years ago. And I got very panicky, and I had to look about some help then myself, because within actually a few weeks, I was like, how did I teach my Eddie how to tie shoelaces? And how did I knew how to take the stabilisers off the bike, but, holding on, how long did it take me to do that? How long? And I started to panic then about how am I going to show my son how to tie his laces? So I talked to somebody about it a couple of times. Then that went off me, and, thank God it did. But when my own child came along, I had this desperate panic mode. Needless to say, a few weeks and I was grand, really. But I'm sure there's others have been affected like that, can I?
And Denise, growing up as well, I mean, can you think of key junctures where you particularly missed your dad, and
the first one, I can tell you.
The sounding board that he would have been in different situations.
The first Holy Communion. Oh, God bless us. So that had been 3 years after Daddy died. And, like anybody else, like months beforehand, these lovely dresses and all. Yeah. So my mother, like the week beforehand, asked a woman to make a dress. Well, oh gosh, bless us and save us. It was just like, as plain a thing as you could get, white. That was it. But sure, the wee nun had asked, I had to do a reading, and I still have the piece of paper she had written it on. So I had to go up to do a reading, and it was, pray for my dad, a prayer for the dead, and especially my daddy. But the whole time, because it was only a few sentences, I had it learned off by heart. But I totally was focused on my mother. She was sitting, pulp, or saying it here, she was sitting over there to the right. But I had my eyes fixated on her, and she couldn't cope with that. Me up reading that out. So we were going to dinner one afterwards for something to eat, and all the other ones in the class and that, wearing a dress. No, my mother, straight home. No, take the dress off. No, words, I'm not going to, no, off. That was it. I don't know where, the dress was given actually to a traveller woman, Mrs. Stokes, a couple of weeks later. I know if my father had been alive, he would have had a decent dress. Mother just didn't care. But it was adamant, take the dress off, we're not going to dinner one with you in that dress.
It was like when that happened, her whole approach in life changed.
That's right.
You would say, yeah.
Oh, God, Mummy became a different woman. Like, beforehand, on a Friday, my mother used to make apple tarts, and she used to pride herself on making up. Mummy, from 1975, my mother never made an apple tart again.
She just lost it.
She lost everything. She didn't care about the house. She didn't... And even having those going away for nice hotels, whatever, with my father, and my mother and father, sorry. It was years before we went anywhere, and every year it seemed to be Bundoran, beautiful Bundoran.
So when you reflect back, Denise, on everything, the night that terrorism struck your home, those bullets haven't really stopped travelling, have they?
No, absolutely not. But as regards of noise of bullets, I know it's a bit different from the question you asked. I don't watch anything on the television or anything that has loud noises, anything violent, anything even remotely disturbing. I can't watch it. It's just, I find it too horrific.
You were a child who from 4 really associated a gun from that point onwards with evil and wrong, whereas many children in their innocence would play with toy guns and caps and water pistols and things like that, but for you that wasn't what they were.
No. In fact, actually, in a woodwork class, I was actually the end of P2 at this stage, and a woodwork class, it was a nice wee class, and other children were making, as I thought, silly things. You wouldn't even have known what they were. But I picked out the biggest piece of wood I've picked, and it was all whatever. And I can remember I hammered on a bit. Now, we're talking, it was a right lump of that size, but the way it was shaped and all. And the teacher said to me, what's that? What's that? Of course, my mother was hurled into the classroom, or hurled into the school, and me and her had to go into a meeting. Oh, they weren't going to take me back. Even I think that was even one of the things why I moved. What's that? And I'm sorry. I said, I've made a gun. I'm going to shoot the man that shot my daddy. But that's what I made.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of this. Oh, this looks amazing. This looks like a gun. And all these other children, I don't know what they'd made, but it didn't look like anything to me. But I was so proud of mine.
Yeah. And that was that, because that trauma was sitting in you in that period of time, and it's just how you felt you could express things at that time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was only, 6, but still... Yeah. Looking back now, it seems really stupid, to even say that at my age. But that's just a 6-year-old. The mind of a 6-year-old, I thought, oh, this is great. I've made this gun.
Yeah. And Denise, do you hear me saying now in terms of, I know your mummy's not in such good health now, but you're continuing to act as a carer for her in each and every way you can. So she's going through early stages, isn't that right? Or is it
I know
more medium stages
no, it's
of
latter,
Alzheimer?
latter
It's the latter
stages.
stage. It's
Yeah.
it's more developed now. So just how is that relationship now? And whenever you're together, how do you feel now?
Of course, I'm very angry with God, angry with the world, that my mother, you know, she has been declining now for 12 years. At the start, you know, the onset of it, different consultants, and you know, they could see her medical notes, etc. They've all said the same. It's the traumatic life that she had, and brought it on so quick because, well, really, from my mother retired from nursing, there was a general decrease in her health, to be honest with you, because she wasn't busy anymore. She wasn't, and in fact, at one stage, I'm sure it's 10 years ago now, she fell and broke her hip, and from that, because it was her first time she'd had an anaesthetic and really been in hospital any length of time, really, I had to seek help from my mother because she was screaming in the hospital if she saw an ambulance person or whatever. She was thinking that, and she was shouting, I didn't shoot any, I didn't shoot any. She thought it was the police. She went on hunger strike for 3 days because she thought she was in prison. So when all was transacted out, apparently my mother hit the wall, as in terms of mentally hit the wall. The PTSD or complex PTSD just exploded. And that was a really frightening experience. I asked my mother's brother to come down and visit her. She's to come off this hunger strike. Oh no, I'm in prison. They've imprisoned me for shooting Denny and I didn't do it. But anyhow, with medication, whatever, you know, that has went by the wayside now. But for many, many years, my mother would have been caught up that all she could talk about, and because she lived with me for 10 years, excuse me, my children could tell you everything about it. She continuously talked about the night they shot Daddy, the aftermath. It just seemed to be, no matter who came into the house, a record player on repeat. No matter who came into the house, my mother was relaying all this, and for years, like,
Because her identity changed, Denise.
It did.
She was no longer
Mrs.
Mullen, who was a mother and everything else.
That's
she
right.
then became the widow of
That's
Dennis
right.
Mullen.
And this woman had went for years, would never talked about Daddy, never talked about anything, and then suddenly you couldn't stop her.
Yeah.
She's now at the stage. She doesn't even know who Daddy was. I brought photographs. She doesn't even know. She doesn't know us. She thinks she's a wee girl. I don't even think she thinks she's at school yet, because all she can say to you is, sorry, I have to go now. There's Daddy coming in for his dinner. Which is, it kills me. Absolutely kills me. I'm just angry. Why is my mother left like this?
And Denise, it's interesting to say that because that's a body of work that we're wanting to look at there and say if is that connection between trauma and the early onslaught of dementia, because there certainly is anecdotal evidence there to suggest
that to me,
there's a correlation. So it's something very, very apparent in your family.
Yeah, I often wonder, was it the amount of Valium and whatever else that they were given? You know, because they were just basically numb to society. Like, you know, to get out of bed was a chore. So, I often wonder, was there something in, really,
Yeah.
the potions that they were made up?